Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, Season 5, let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. And as I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch.
No, if you say it about our treatment, talk to him. Okay. I'm just going to pass him the phone.
Okay.
Hello?
Okay, to catch you up, Uche just was informed that Aaliyah had left and no longer wanted to be in the experiment. And it was really interesting hearing from Uche's point of view because he doesn't know what was happening between Aaliyah and Lydia. I mean, it's still unclear. I'm really curious as to what Aaliyah will say here. But from Uche's perspective, and he was talking about this, he's like, I don't understand. The last time we talked, Aaliyah had a bit of a problem with the fact that I had dated Lydia before, but we had completely resolved that issue, and she was ready to get married, and I thought everything was fine, and then she just disappears? Like, what's going on here? And he kept looking down at the ground saying, I must be missing something. There's something I don't know. And I find that to be a very wise way of looking at things, because often in the absence of information, we will grasp at anything to reassure us that we're not completely in the dark. It's very anxiety-provoking to be in the dark regarding information. So a lot of conspiracy theories are generated through that emotion.
There was like a exchange of words between Lydia and I that didn't really go well.
Okay, an exchange of words that didn't really go well. Was it what we saw on camera? Yeah. Well, let's watch.
We talked about this, Aaliyah.
It's changed.
What did Lydia say?
I was on edge a little, Uche. I was. I told her if you didn't propose, maybe you could have him back if you wanted. And she was just like, fuck you, I don't want him back.
Why would you say something like that?
Yeah. So, that was not on camera, and I'm guessing they would have shown us that footage if it was on camera. I don't understand. They're always on camera, so I guess there's a possibility that something went down, or they'll show a flashback. Maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. But anyway, it sounds like they are rising in conflict of some sort, and then Aaliyah says, you can have him if you want him. And so if that happened, then it sounds like Aaliyah was in a position where she thought that Lydia was trying to subtly say that she's still in love with Uche or something. Or I don't know. I don't know. Or that Aaliyah was picking up on the possibility that Lydia was trying to influence her subtly to not be with Uche so Lydia could have Uche. I don't know. And then she says that, and then Lydia says, I don't want him. You can have him. I don't know. Maybe, hopefully we'll get some background.
Because I'll be honest, I feel like she smothers me a little bit. Every time she comes, she brings you up.
Why does all of that matter? It happened.
Uche, I'm sorry.
Okay, I feel really bad for everybody, Aaliyah and Uche. It's pretty awful. So, okay, we're hearing from Aaliyah what it looked like. Because the edit, it looked like everything was fine until that final conversation with Lydia, where they talk openly about the Uche connection, and they make up, and then Lydia just starts downloading information, and Aaliyah twice on camera says, I don't really want to know this information, and Lydia just bulldozes, and just all this stuff starts pouring out, and details about Uche, about what kind of car, what color his car is, as if, who cares about that? Now, from my memory, Lydia wasn't necessarily, or at least overtly, bad-mouthing Uche. But anyway, so we're hearing that, so something happened. Well, it sounds like that conversation eventually got to conflict for the two of them, and then there was some kind of a blow-up there. I guess that's more information than what we had. Anyway, the way that it looked in the previous episode was that Aaliyah, having talked to Lydia, had been overwhelmed with something, and then decided to skip town. And that's essentially what she's saying here. So I just wonder what's going on with her. If I was to take a guess, I would say that she just became overwhelmed, and it really just threw a wrench in the situation. When you are faced with brand new information like that. Like, I'll tell you about the time when I saw Fight Club and I was in the theater, and the whole time I thought Tyler Durden, spoiler alert, was a real person. Get to the end, all of a sudden, he's not. And I remember physically feeling like I was having vertigo. I was watching the scene and I was like, what? And I felt dizzy. I felt like I was going to fall over in my seat. And that physical feeling was my brain and body adjusting to this new reality. It causes you to question all sorts of things. And I'm just watching a movie. Imagine Lydia went through. It's just like, so wait, what? And in that process, you could absolutely imagine someone rationally saying, I need to get out of here. I don't feel safe. Lots of people knew about this. Uche knew about this. Lydia knew about this. The production knew about this. I just didn't know about it. And although on its surface, it looks fine, but get me out of here. This does not feel good. I can always get re-engaged later on. Uche and I can get together again off show or something, or I don't even care about Uche at this point. I'm just so disturbed and scared of all the weird reality. What else am I not being told? Like, just get me out of here. You can imagine someone feeling that way, and so, I think I would feel that way. I also think if we think about the way Aaliyah presents, particularly in relation to Lydia, how she seems to be the yin of Lydia's yang, if you will. If Lydia were to involve herself with another person in the lounge, if that other person didn't have Aaliyah's personality, I'm guessing that that relationship, it's easy to look at that relationship between Lydia and Aaliyah and say it's all Lydia's doing. That dynamic is because of Lydia. But it's also in part probably caused by Aaliyah and what she brings to the table and her patterns. The way that she would react to Lydia and the way that she would succumb, if you will. Like that time when Lydia's just like, look at me. If someone did that to me, I might politely look at them, but I'd be like, oh, we're done. What are you doing? I don't care how supportive you are. That was fucking annoying, and I don't want to talk to you ever again. Just, you don't do that to me. But I don't have a personality like what I think possibly is present with Aaliyah. I don't know that. But anyway, so you can imagine, I'm just thinking out loud here, that if Aaliyah has something there, like she tends to shut down or comply or freeze or appease in the face of dominance or trauma or fear, that she might have been abused or having gone through some trauma where she had to chronically over time learn how to just appease, not only outwardly but inwardly. She would have to say to herself, oh no, Lydia's like, look at me. And there's this tiny little voice inside Aaliyah's head that's just like, there's something wrong here. She's bulldozing you. But another part of her is much more concerned for safety because of a previous pattern that was developed, that this other part says, shut up, don't listen to that person. And so inside of Aaliyah's conscious mind and partly unconscious mind, she's like, just hand yourself over. That's the safe thing to do. That is a trauma response. I'm not saying that this is true with Aaliyah, but there seem to be some arrows pointing that direction. And then the distress and that voice inside of her of saying just like, something's wrong here. And eventually it just becomes too big. And she's just like, get me out of here. Because I'm guessing that if there wasn't something along these lines going on with Aaliyah, that she either would have navigated it completely differently with Lydia throughout the whole thing, particularly towards the end, and or she would have gone to Uche and actually told him, look, I'm overwhelmed. I need to actually, I'm going to leave and I'm sorry. And I apologize. You didn't do anything wrong, but I'm just overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I feel unsafe. I don't feel good about this. And so I just want to go. And I'm really sorry. She didn't do that. She just ditched him. And when that happened, I thought, well, then Aaliyah must hate Uche. There must be some complaint against it. Why would you treat someone like that, right? But we're not hearing that. Now, there's also a possibility that in this phone call, she doesn't feel safe to even disclose on this phone call how she really feels about Uche. There's a lot of possibilities, but yeah, it's personally, I'm given everything we're seeing, I'm glad she left because, that's something you can always do. You don't have to stay on the show.
Love somebody, you don't just leave without telling them anything.
Please don't.
Are you at home right now? Where are you?
I'm home.
Why didn't you stay here and talk to me? How do you feel about me right now?
I still love you. I still want you.
Then why aren't you?
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Now, if I were a little birdie on Uche's shoulder, I'd be like, take it easy. You just heard what you wanted to hear, and give it some time. Meet up in person off the show. Maybe Aaliyah has something wrong, some complaint about the show itself. Maybe she partially left or largely left because she didn't like the way the show treated her or something, and she doesn't want to talk about it while the film is rolling. But if I were a little birdie on the show, I'd be like, you just heard. And so, you know, marriage either way is the goal, right? And finding true love, you found it. So, you know, screw the show. Run to her.
About me right now.
I still love you. I still want you.
Then why aren't you here?
Well, it's not hard to put two and two together and at least imagine that something's going on between Aaliyah and Lydia that Aaliyah doesn't want to deal with. And I don't blame her. I don't know if anyone would. So, you know, why aren't you here? Well, I think I just kind of told you that me and Lydia had a huge falling out. And when we go to the honeymoon and stuff, I'll be stuck with Lydia. Lydia will be there. I wonder if even Aaliyah is thinking, I think Lydia found someone that is very influenceable and managed to get him to propose to her so that she could follow me to the honeymoon, follow us to the honeymoon.
Uche, I do love you. I do.
If you love somebody, you talk to them. This
In a normal environment.
I know it's not a normal environment, but that's the entire point.
So I think we're heading back into that kind of tone that he gets into, and I wonder what's going on with that. A lot of people would say, oh, this is obviously a sign of abuse, but I don't know, it could be, but it doesn't look certain to me. But she's like, it's not a normal situation. And yeah, there's so many abnormal things about it. She's on a reality TV show, the Lydia thing. So I just hope that they have a chance to really fully explore this together.
If we can get through a stressful situation, that means it's going to work in a marriage.
I would not do that in a marriage.
If you can put up with the situation of even being in the room with somebody that I used to date.
You'll be my husband by then.
No, Aaliyah, we will never get to that point. If you can't get through something like this.
Yeah, if I were a little birdie on his shoulder, I would say, take a breath, give it some time, and also maybe wait until you're in person to have these kind of conversations. Don't you think it's worth it to have that? Don't jump to any conclusions. You haven't heard the whole story. She might not be willing to share the whole story since the cameras are rolling. So there's a lot at stake, and give it some time. This is worth giving some time. So yeah, basically what he's saying is, well, if you can't handle being with one of my exes in a room, well, you know, the asterisk here is that he doesn't know what happened, right? We know. So let me talk about mentalization. It's a psychological concept developed a lot by Peter Fonagy. And the long and short of it is that we have this ability to hold someone's mind in our mind. And often it's developed at a certain stage of life, and it is refined and improved over time. The experiment, and maybe this will help to demonstrate what mentalization is that you have a child. So let's say I'm the researcher and I have a child in front of me across the table, and then I have another adult in the room with me. And so that's me, another researcher, and the child. And I have a ball and I have two containers. I put the ball underneath one container, you know, like I put a cup over the ball, and I put the other cup upside down as well. And I ask the child, where's the ball? And they'll say, oh, it's right there. And then I ask the child, where do you think Mary thinks the ball is? And the child will say, oh, well, the ball is underneath that cup. We have Mary leave the room, and then I switch the ball. I put the ball into the other cup. And then I have Mary walk back in. And then I ask the child, where do you think Mary thinks the ball is? And before a certain age, on average, children will think that Mary will think the ball has moved, even though Mary left the room when the ball was moved. But past a certain age, past a certain developmental phase, if you will, the child will be able to hold the mind of Mary in their mind and think, okay, well, what is the world like from Mary's perspective? Well, Mary left the room with the ball underneath this cup and didn't see the ball move. Even though I know the ball is I know in my mind, the ball is under the other cup. But in Mary's mind, the ball is still in the first cup. So Mary thinks the ball is under the first cup. And that is not something that we're born with. We might be born with the capacity of it, and as we age, it becomes better and better over time. And this is the basis for a lot of functions in life, most notably in this situation, to empathy and to getting along in your relationships, particularly your marriage. So for us, we have to mentalize what he is experiencing. We know that Lydia and Aaliyah have been having an intense exchange. He does not know that. He hasn't seen it. He hasn't really heard of it. Even if he heard little bits, he couldn't imagine what was going on. Plus, what eventually happened after Aaliyah was told was way worse, at least on camera, and probably for Aaliyah, particularly given all the new revelations, than had happened previously. So even if Aaliyah could convey to Uche, she had yet to experience what we eventually saw. So we know that Aaliyah has been through something, but if we put ourselves in his mind, and I invite you to do this not for Uche's sake, but for your sake and for the people in your life. A lot of times, what I will experience in the comment section of my videos, I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but like, for example, this happened years ago when I first started watching reality TV. A few years ago, I was watching Colt and Larissa, if you remember. And I was going back in time, like a couple of years, and watching old seasons. And people watching the videos, my reaction videos, had already seen the entire storyline. And it spanned a number of seasons. And I was watching from the beginning and reacting to what I had seen thus far. And what I had seen, particularly in the first season of this couple, it was seemingly edited in a way that made the guy look better than he was. And it made the woman look worse than maybe she was. And so I'm reacting to that data and just wondering and using it as a jumping off point. And there was a minority of people in the comment section that were livid at me because I was not pointing out how horrible he was. And then there were people who were commenting to that and saying, he hasn't seen the next season. He's only reacting to what he has seen. And so in this situation, we had two groups of people in the comment section. You had people who could mentalize with me and know, okay, even though I know what Colt eventually does, he does not know. And so where is he in the timeline? And how did I feel when I was in his shoes? How might I feel if I were in his shoes? I feel a certain way about Colt, but how would I feel if I were in Kirk's shoes? And so for those people, they had the capacity to mentalize. They had the capacity to mentalize what might be in my mind. For the other group of people, their mentalization, their theory of mind was impaired in some way. Either it is globally impaired for that individual, meaning that something went wrong or there's some deficit, cognitive deficit or something. Abuse can absolutely, and research shows this, contribute to a deficit in mentalization that can become a pretty big problem. It's a very important social function in marriage and relationships, just when you're running into a stranger, to be able to have a theory of mind, to be able to guess as to what is going on inside of someone, not only just thought-wise, but also feeling-wise, the ability to wonder or notice or surmise or conclude what one would be feeling, even though they're not your feelings, or you wouldn't necessarily feel that way, or you're not in their shoes, that kind of thing. So for the other group of people, it was impaired somehow, either because they just are always that way, or they were so overwhelmed with trauma being triggered, like for someone, say, who might have wavering mentalization, and when they're doing okay and they're not stressed out, they are able to mentalize, say with people, maybe even with me, but maybe they were abused in the past by someone that looked like Colt. And when Colt comes on the screen, their distress starts to go up, their differentiation starts to go down, and their mentalization capacity starts to go down. And thus, then they go into the comment section and say, I can't believe that you're not attacking Colt, Kirk. You're an irresponsible therapist. I mean, that might even be lower than what people were saying to me at the time. Back then, it was kind of a different experience for me on YouTube. Now, the comment section I find to be, it's totally fine to criticize me. I don't know, use some politeness. I'm open to being wrong. I'm wrong frequently. It's okay. It's okay that I'm wrong. It's okay you notice I'm wrong. It's okay to tell me I'm wrong. Just be light about it. My point is that when we're watching him, for me, I'm challenged because I'm thinking, Aaliyah's been through some stuff, and take it easy. Like, slow down. But from his perspective, all he knows is that, okay, he's holding this secret because he feels that he has to, or production told him he has to, or something about Lydia. He falls in love with Aaliyah and then reveals to Aaliyah, it's like, I got something to tell you, tells her. Aaliyah, eventually they work it out, but for Uche, and Aaliyah's like, so do you want to be with Lydia? And he's like, no, I don't want to be with her. And then Aaliyah comes around and it looks like they're heading towards engagement. And then all of a sudden she's just gone. And he calls her up and she says, me and Lydia had a fight. Okay, so from his perspective, he's like, so who cares? Like, okay, I'm sorry that happened, that you had a fight with one of my exes, but what does that have to do with us? So you get in a fight with some ex of mine or just somebody and you leave me? Why am I left in the dust here? I'm just hearing that you and Lydia had a fight. Why am I getting thrown under the bus? And that's not okay. This is a big deal. You knew I was going to propose to you soon, and you just ditched me. You didn't even tell me. You didn't even sit down with me and say, I'm sorry, I want to leave. You just picked up and left. So from his point of view, that is pretty hurtful, and that is pretty alarming. And it's also hard to imagine that he would imagine what really happened, because what really happened was so strange. What Lydia did was some of the oddest behavior. I mean, I don't know what to say about it in terms of if it's pathological or not. I'm just saying, I can't remember ever seeing a scene like that.
To date.
Be my husband by then.
No, Aaliyah, we will never get to that point.
And then she says, this will never happen again, because if we're married and someone talks with me, if an ex has so that actually implies that she is saying that because they're not married, because another woman wants to be with you, that throws me off and makes me insecure about you. Let's rewind.
Be my husband by then.
No, Aaliyah, we will never get to that point.
Yeah, so he's like, if you can't handle talking to one of my exes, and then she says, but we'll be married at that point. So that implies she's saying, if I'm more secure in this relationship, I'd be able to handle it. But the fact that I'm not super secure in this relationship, it makes me insecure about you, given that she wants to be with you. Is that what she's saying?
You can't get through something like this. We will never get to that point.
If they don't try to do something after the show, if they don't date afterwards, this would be quite a travesty, quite a misunderstanding. Now, I suppose this says something about Uche, right? That he would be so quick to reject his own traumas, or his own self-assuredness or something is kicking in. So I guess you could extrapolate a little bit about Uche here, even if we mentalize and put ourselves in his shoes. You're just thinking, why are you taking such rash act? It seems like you're going pretty far. She just said she loves you and wants to be with you. There's some confusion there, and there's an issue there, but give it a chance.
I can't believe some girl said something to you and you let that come in between us.
How do you not know that when she was at your place earlier this year, she didn't see an email and applied to be on this damn show?
Are you fucking kidding me right now?
Wait, so who did she say? She's saying that Lydia saw the email, or that, yeah, that's what she's saying, right? Aaliyah's saying, how do you know Lydia didn't see an email at your place and come on the show to try to chase you down? I don't know if I talked about this speculation or just thought it, but I do remember thinking that. I think that's quite an allegation. Certainly it's possible, but it seems like a lot. And then the other allegation people are saying is that they both knew about this and lied to the producers, but then when the time came to reveal, they were planning on doing that reveal on the show. They conspired to get on the show just so they could have this drama. That seems unlikely. It's possible, but it's unlikely, especially given that I'm pretty sure the producers are pretty clear. It's like, you got to tell us who you've dated recently. But I don't know, do they do that? It seems like they would, right? It seems like they'd have to ask, can you give us the first name of everyone you've dated in the past 10 years so we can, determine if any of those individuals are on the show or so. I don't know. It just seems like something you do, but it seems like it'd be hard to manage, and it also might be kind of invasive, right? Some people were emailing me and saying that they think that the show looks at their Instagram history to see if any of the other cast members are in the pictures. And, that's a pretty bad way to determine if people were dating in the past, because one, you don't necessarily post everyone that you've dated, because it's not just that they dated for a while. I mean, that's interesting particularly, but they don't want anyone to even know each other, because if they know each other, then they know what they look like, which eliminates the purpose of the experiment, not only for those two individuals, but for everyone else, because they can tell, oh, I know, I've met her before or something. Anyway, so looking through an Instagram feed is a pretty bad way. Plus, when people break up, sometimes they scrub their Instagram feed. Or I think someone else said, well, they might look through the friends. But again, when people break up, they might block each other or something. So, yeah, I wonder how they manage that, or they just hope it just doesn't happen.
How do you not know that when she was at your place earlier this year, she didn't see an email and applied to be on this damn show?
Are you fucking kidding me right now? Did you seriously just ask me that?
I don't know how she's and you are both here in the first...
I don't either, Aaliyah.
So, again, I tell him to kind of cool it down a little bit, because I think he is taking that question as an accusation of him. But I think what she's saying is she's accusing Lydia. Yeah, I think there's a massive miscommunication right here, mostly because he's not slowing down. And I don't think she's offering up, similar to their conversation with the infidelity, right? At the end, she finally said a few things that I think she should have said right up front. Like, I felt bad about it. It was a really difficult time for me. But instead, it was switched. What she said up front was, well, my sexual needs weren't being met. And I was like, oh, that's not going to go over well. And then she kind of doubled down on that. And then eventually she said things that would probably have been reassuring in the beginning. And with this, I think there's a similar dynamic. And you could argue that his bulldozing ways is interfering with it. He's not as bulldozing as Lydia, but he is bulldozing in a sense. And it doesn't help. I think she might be shutting down, or it makes it harder for her to think straight and to voice things. But and we're seeing an edited version, I think, but it would potentially really help him if she said something like, look, I don't have any problem with you. I love you. I want to be with you. Lydia freaks the crap out of me. And so it's not about meeting your ex. It's about Lydia. Even if Lydia wasn't your ex, there's something very creepy about her, and I'm terrified of her, and I don't know what's happening, and I feel threatened, and I left. It has nothing to do with you. But the things that she's saying, it's interesting to be in his head, especially if he's coming from some sort of trauma, that he might assume that, Aaliyah is bringing all this up. It's just like, look, I don't trust you. I don't trust you, Uche, because Lydia's here. And that makes me think that you want to be with Lydia, or there's something shady going on. But I think what Aaliyah is saying is, it's not you, it's Lydia. You don't understand how weird that dynamic was. I just had to get out. But he's interpreting it as a personal attack and reacting like that. Like, are you effing kidding me? You wouldn't say that if you didn't think you were personally being attacked, right? I don't think he's in the business of defending Lydia so strongly. I think he thinks he's defending himself, but I don't think Aaliyah is actually attacking him.
Seriously, just ask me that?
I don't know how she's and you are both here in the first...
I don't either, Aaliyah.
And maybe I'm just giving Aaliyah the benefit of the doubt, or I just want to see it in a certain way. But when she says that statement, I think what she's saying is, I don't trust Lydia. I don't know why the two of you are here, because I don't trust Lydia. But maybe not. Maybe she is accusing him of something. I don't know. Let's watch.
I told you that. I don't fucking know how she's here.
This is bullshit. The whole situation is...
You keep on talking about her, though. Like
Because I don't have you yet.
You had 1 day. You had 1 day.
So he says, in his bulldozing ways, but you can understand where his emotion is coming from. He's being kind of left at the altar, just completely abandoned. And he's saying, you keep talking about Lydia. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's a clue. That's a clue to, I think, what's happening, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Because I don't have you yet.
You had 1 day.
And then she says, because I don't have you yet. I don't know. I'm interpreting that in the way that I was earlier, but I guess I don't know what she means.
1 day. 1 day. You had to sit in a room with a girl for 1 day, and you chose to go home instead.
You don't know what was happening. Uche. He doesn't know. We know. He doesn't know. And it would be very strange for him to imagine. Now, maybe some would argue, look, he knows Lydia and has probably seen Lydia interact with all sorts of people. So it shouldn't be that much of a stretch for him to imagine what's happening.
I don't feel like it's fair for you to say that I just don't value you or what we have because I did something to protect me.
Exactly. You thought about yourself and you didn't think about me at all.
Uche, I think she's trying to explain it. And from my perspective, given what we saw, I'm interpreting it a certain way that is actually very reassuring to Uche, but he's taking it in the opposite way. And I can see how from his perspective it would come across that way. So using this as a jumping off point, early in my career as a couples therapist, I discovered for myself that the foundation of almost all strife in marriages and in divorces is misunderstanding, even friendships, even in work. But if we're just talking about marriages, misunderstanding. And I remember when I first had this thought, I thought, that's too simple. That's too reductionistic. It's too simple. That I learned all this theory and all the history of psychotherapy, going back before Freud, and just all these ideas and concepts. I'm like, it can't just be about misunderstanding. Well, for the next 15 years, this notion kept coming up, and then eventually, and I've never really systematically thought about it, but my surface theory about this is that almost all conflict in relationships has to do with misunderstanding. But what sort of misunderstanding are we talking about? Not necessarily this kind, but you could argue it's played out in this. Like a common example would be that you're in a 7-year relationship, you were married a few years ago, you have a small child together, and you start to feel like your spouse is being cold and distant from you. And at first you're like, well, it's maybe an off day, but then a couple weeks pass and you just start feeling like you start reaching out, you start bidding for love and attention from your partner, and they give you the cold shoulder, and you start feeling hurt and upset, worried. Maybe even you say, hey, I feel like you're kind of distant lately, and your partner's just like, yeah, no, everything's fine. And you just feel like you're being blown off. You feel like you're being dismissed. You feel like eventually you might feel like you're being thrown away in the trash. And you get upset, and you get hurt, and you try to hold on, but eventually you get upset, and either you attack or criticize, or you start distancing yourself or something. And this goes back and forth. And then eventually, this couple comes in my office, and we go back to the beginning, and we start sifting through it. And we find out that the other person was cold and distant because of something that the other partner did way back, but also because they were very stressed out at work, and they feel like they're doing most of the child care and the house chores, but and they felt like they communicated it, but they didn't really do it effectively. And all of this experience is happening for both people, where they both feel dismissed. They both feel like their feelings don't matter to their partner. They both feel like they're being thrown away. They both feel scared and worried about the relationship. They both are trying every day to sustain the relationship and manage it, but both people feel like the other person just doesn't even give a crap. That is a misunderstanding, right? And in this instance, I think that what might be happening is she feels like she's explaining it, but she's not giving enough words because she's overwhelmed, and maybe she doesn't really want to get into the specifics about Lydia because she doesn't want to cause any drama or be attacked by Lydia or something. And so when she says, what did she say?
It's fair for you to say that I just don't value you or what we have because I did something to protect me.
Right. So she said, I don't think it's fair to say that I don't value you because I did something to protect me. Those things shouldn't be mutually exclusive. I should be able to love you and to take an action to protect me. Now, from our standpoint, since we know what happened, at least an edited version, I think what we think, I think what you think, what Aaliyah thinks is that I need to protect myself from Lydia because Lydia is a thing. And I still love you, Uche. And I'm actually doing this to protect myself and I want to come back around with you. But from Uche's standpoint, given what he knows to be true right now. And by the way, the producers could stop this whole thing down and tell him, by the way, let me show you some footage of what was happening. They're not doing that. But I don't know what to say about that, but that would help. That if I were on the production, I would have an impulse to do that. Whether or not that would be allowed, it probably would be, right? At the very least, just a word, just like, hey, Uche, you might be misunderstanding Leah. Let me just tell you in one sentence, what Lydia did to Aaliyah was over the top. It wasn't overtly hostile, but it was very domineering and very bothersome. And one could feel very unsafe given the whole scenario. Not just what Lydia was doing in the moment, but the whole thing of Aaliyah finally realizing, oh my God, the person that I'm in love with and my new best friend that I've been cuddling with every day both have been lying to me this whole time. What? And now that I'm trying to assert myself with Lydia, she's bulldozing me. Has she been bulldozing me the whole time? Am I bulldozed? That's another thing that Aaliyah might be thinking is, so I've been bamboozled by Lydia this whole time. I'm just, there were signs that look at me. And there were signs that I should have noticed. I should have pushed. I wanted to push back, but I didn't. Why didn't I push back? And not only that, but I just handed myself over to this person. And then I learned that she's been lying to me all the time. And then I try to push back and she bulldozes me even more. Is there something wrong with me? Am I not a good judge of character? Do I brainwash myself based on what other people, do I just do what other people want me to do? I wouldn't be surprised, but given there's a little, tiny little indication of this when she was talking about the infidelity, that she didn't break up with him because she didn't want to hurt his feelings. So on one hand, you could see that as, well, it's pretty selfish of you to do that, right? That you didn't break up with him or you didn't tell him because you didn't want to hurt his feelings. That's pretty selfish. But another point of view is, for some people, they're so people-pleasing that they please in the immediacy, but not in the long term, if that makes any sense. Anyway, so for her, she's saying, it's not fair for you to say I don't love you when I'm doing something that protects me. I think she's trying to say to him, I needed to do this to preserve my sanity, to preserve my integrity, to preserve my safety. And this has nothing to do with you, Uche, which she's basically, I think, saying. And then he just keeps doubling down. And I just think, slow down.
Exactly. You thought about yourself. And you didn't think about me at all.
Are you thinking about me right now?
I'm literally here getting ready to propose to you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's tempting to extrapolate that he has a hard time with empathy and has a hard time with being in other people's shoes. I think that is possible. We just don't know. It's possible that is being exhibited right now. But it's also possible that he both is being triggered by this and is very, very hurt. And he doesn't know what we know and couldn't imagine what we know. So I don't know if this is the end of this couple, which I'm guessing it is on the show, then I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to that question.
To tell you I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Yes, I'm thinking about you. That's the only thing I'm thinking about. You didn't even write me a letter. I got nothing. You couldn't even say goodbye? Nothing?
Time to do that. At the moment.
I was going to, but didn't have time to do that in the moment. Yeah. From our perspective, I understand that. From his perspective, I can imagine that wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Do that. At the moment.
I cannot believe this. Oh, I'm so stupid. I'm such a...
Yeah. It's hard to know what's happening. There's a lot of possibilities, but there's a lot of details that are in the column of one of the hypotheses that I've been saying. And statements like that are usually made by individuals who have been made to feel humiliated and abandoned and quote unquote stupid in the past. People don't usually say this the first time this happens. So I'm guessing that his intensity and lack of slowing down is fueled by the terror of this is happening again.
Fucking idiot.
No, you're not.
Ah, this is exactly what I thought was gonna happen. I was gonna let myself get close to the wrong person.
Right. You wouldn't think that before going on the show if that hadn't happened at least one significant time or a number of times. And it's just so unfortunate. Tell me this is not the end of they should just date. Presumably, well, this was a year ago, right? So they don't have a chance to watch the show, and he wouldn't have the chance to watch the show until the show comes out, probably. But I don't know, because they seem like they could have worked out. Who knows? I mean, in the real world, they might have ultimately not been compatible, but it seemed like there was potential there.
Okay, well, if that's how you feel, then maybe we don't need to keep talking.
No, we're not going to keep talking, Aaliyah.
Can you please not make that decision right now?
Oh, it's so heartbreaking. Listen to her. She's saying she loves you. She wants you. Give her, even if you believe from your perspective what you believe, like, it's kind of a intense, weird situation to be on the show. Like, at least give it a chance. Yeah. I feel really bad for Aaliyah right now. To go through all that with Lydia and then now to go through it with Uche. And you just think, like, if she only just had a chance to write him a letter, that this whole thing, but maybe not. You know, there's another possibility given his vibe right now that he has a thing, a reactivity, a self-assuredness, a bulldozing tendency that if he feels humiliated or rejected, he goes on the warpath, and that would have happened regardless of what she did. But we just don't know because we're not given that chance.
I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to talk to her. I don't want her phone number. I don't want to see her again.
I always wondered what that background was. So that's just a map painting of a hallway that is made to look out of focus. Sometimes I wonder, is that a green screen? I think in the previous seasons they would actually shoot these interviews in the hallway. At least that's my memory. It always kind of bugs me when they do that. Just put them in front of a white wall, like in the After the Altar season 4 with Brett and Tiffany. They were being interviewed, and you could clearly tell that it was a green screen situation, and they were putting some like fancy lounge restaurant behind them. And I'm just thinking, just put a couple plants like Zach Galifianakis. When you see stuff like that, you're just thinking, well, what else is fake? You know, just it raises all the questions which shouldn't, a show like this doesn't want us to be asking. All right, so if you want to support what we're doing here, you can become a member on YouTube by clicking the join button below or the link below in the description. That allows you to become a member, gives you the opportunity to become a member of this YouTube channel. When you become a member, you're pledging to give a certain amount of money every month to us. And when you do that, that absolutely gives me the ability to do this, because then I can pay my bills. And so I don't have to do the other work that I would have to do in order to pay my bills. And so if you want to do that, that's great. It's also just a nice gesture to me anyway. If you don't want to do it or you can't afford it, no problem. I still feel the goodwill from y'all in the comment section, or when you like things or subscribe, or I don't know, maybe I just feel it sometimes. So, it's not the only way, but it is a way. And know that if you become a member, you get access to exclusive videos. We just recently did our 15th anniversary, in which Umberto and I live streamed for 15 hours on YouTube a few weekends ago. And I normally will take it down because it's pretty shaggy content. There's a lot of hiccups in the presentation. It's not very good. And I feel like if you're not there live, it feels bad as content. If you're there live, you sort of, accommodate or deal with the shagginess of the presentation. But this time, what I decided to do was give it to YouTube members and patrons, by the way. But I had to edit the whole thing because I tried to take out as much of the shagginess so that I wouldn't be embarrassed. But it is available for members if you're interested. And when you become a member, then you'll be able to look for the member-only videos. And I've already made a number of other member-exclusive videos and plan on continuing to do a lot more. There's a lot on my plate. I think on the plate is to watch the Taylor Swift documentary. There's a couple other things in there. But, so take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.